close contest. Norton to ground. Hannon's got some speed. Can Bailey Smith score? Towards goal. Bailey Smith. Has he got the Dogs into a prelim final? At the back, Bailey Smith's got three. Can Vandermeer soccer through? He gets a point. That gives the Dogs the lead. The Dogs do it. Angola. Little left, but it'll squeeze through. And they get another one, the Cats. What a huge win this has been for the Cats. They are going to win this game and go into another prelim final. And they do it. And they win by 35 points. And Geelong play Melbourne in the prelim.
Arguably the game of the year and arguably one of the worst finals we've seen in quite some time. Headline, a big weekend of football that we just saw and a big couple days in the news story, Liam.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, we'll get into the games in a minute, but yeah, some ripper game on Saturday night, as we all saw. And obviously, the other game wasn't too close, but before we get into the two monster games, we've had a fair bit of news, more than we've had in the last few weeks or so. But you could say arguably the biggest one was a big shock on Sunday night, I believe. Rumours got spread around that Lachie Neale wants to head back home to Perth or Western Australia to raise his family. Then Brisbane came out with a statement the day after and said that he hadn't requested a trade, but he had just requested for some time with his family or with his wife to talk about his future and whether he wants to stay in Queensland or head home to Western Australia. So it's big. I would never have thought this or seen this coming if you could have told me. I never thought that Lachie Neale would have wanted to go back home, but it's Richmond in strife if it's all true. If he wants to officially request a trade,
they are the Brownlow medalist. Obviously, originally played 7 or 8 seasons from Fremantle, off the top of my head. Went to Brisbane to try and chase some success, and I saw something today. I think it was Ben Dixon that said it, the Fox Footy commentator / I don't know, personality, whatever you want to call it. And he raised an interesting point. If Lachie Neale wants to go home with his family, if Brisbane asked him, are you willing to go to West Coast? And he said no, is that Lachie really wanting to go home for family, or is it he wants to go back to Fremantle?
It's probably he wants to go back to Fremantle. I think when you're talking about Perth, you're probably arguing either both teams. You don't care. You just want to be in your hometown. But if he gets slapped in the face and says, no, you're on to West Coast, I think he's not going home, wants to go home at all. I think he just wants to reunite with Fremantle because for some reason he sees something that we also all don't. But yeah, it's
Freo have a fairly bright future. I can see them as a very dangerous time in 3 or so years.
Yeah.
And obviously Neale will be almost in the twilight of his career. I think he turns 29 next year. He's 28 now. So we'll see how it all pans out over the next couple of weeks, especially once the season's all done and dusted and trade period opens. Now, the next part on Fremantle's note is Lachie Schultz signed a new 2-year deal. Obviously, he was being heavily pursued by Hawthorn, as the rumours stated, but he has declined that and accepts a 2-year deal on Freo's behalf, which is good for their future. And just before we move on from Fremantle, now they've appointed ex-Bulldogs star Bob Murphy to the role of head of football operations and performance. And the club says he will manage elements of both the AFL and the AFLW. So what are your thoughts on that? It's a pretty gutsy move.
It's a big get.
He is an absolute superstar on the field, so it'll be very interesting to see what he can do off the field.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's a good get for Fremantle. Obviously, say if they're competing in, 2, 3, 4 years' time, yeah, it's good to have him around. He's a veteran of the league. He has, good footy knowledge. So, yeah, pretty big get for Fremantle. So, yeah, very well done.
Now we'll move on to Hawthorn, where news came out of the club this morning, being Tuesday, that they have delisted 5 players on their list. So would you like to take us through those 5 names?
I believe the 5 were Keegan Brooksby, James Cousins, which was a big surprise, Michael Hartley, Damon Greaves, and Harry Pepper. I think about 3 of them are defenders, and they've got a pretty good backline going forward, so I can understand why. But the one that I was confused about the most was James Cousins. When he was in the side, he didn't play many games this year, but he did look pretty solid from the games we saw him play. Yeah, big surprise for me. I thought they might have been kept around, but
he's 23. He had, I think it was the end of last season, maybe, where he had that 5-game stretch where he almost had as many disposals as not Tom Mitchell, Jack McRae, I meant to say. So he was up and about for 5 games or so.
Sure.
And then sort of nothing else really eventuated out of him. He started in the side for the first few weeks and then got dropped due to performance. I think he still had a little bit in him. He was a ball magnet, but I think his efficiency is what held him back quite a lot. Now,
for sure.
Our next topic is the 2021 grand final has been confirmed for 5:15 Perth time, which of course is 2-hour difference, so 7:15 Australian Eastern time. Thoughts?
I'm not overly happy. I don't want to. Last year, I found it very difficult to watch a grand final start time at 7 o'clock, I believe it was last year. So I still have to wait, till 7 o'clock to watch a grand final. I'm not a big fan. I would have been happy if it started about 4:30 our time here in Victoria, and that would have been 2:30 in Perth. I would have been over the moon with that. But yeah, if I was stuck to a 12 grand final, I can see it though.
It's all about the money, isn't it?
It is.
Perth have, probably the best stadium in terms of facilities and things like that in the league. They have the light display, and it'll be a good halftime show. I'll give him that.
For sure.
As the sun is pretty much set. But what else? It's a silly time slot because the lights,
I guess,
at 5:15, if you're driving a car, the lights barely work and it's hard to see generally.
Yeah,
so it's like that weird time slot.
Yeah.
And it's
I guess so. It is
a normal grand final would finish, not start.
Yeah. I guess another reason too is probably because of the Perth, backdrop. They do get very nice sunsets over there. So I guess it's twilight in Perth, but again, it's strange. But anyway, we have to wait till bloody 7 o'clock and have to have eaten dinner by then to then sit down and watch the grand final. But anyway, we roll on.
Do
bring it back to 2:30 next year, please.
Please do. Make sure it's in Melbourne too. We'll move on to the first game of the semi-final weekend, which pretty much lived up to script, didn't it?
It did.
It was exactly how people were predicting it. The Cats took control of the game quite early. They kept the Giants goalless in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe they did,
They kicked into gear throughout the rest of the game, just sort of notched it up every now and then. And they led by 32 points at the 3-quarter time break. It appeared the Giants were actually going to mount a comeback at the start of that last quarter. I think the whole stadium, except the Geelong fans, were rooting for the Giants. They kicked 3 of the first 4, so they got it back to about a 16 or 17 point margin, if I remember correctly. And then they just stopped. and the Cats
Yeah,
outran them with
just
their
ran over the top.
experience by 35 points, 103-68 at Optus Stadium. What were your general thoughts on this one?
I could always see it happening. I dared to believe that an upset was brewing for the Giants, but I guess the Cats just showed they're not done yet. Everyone was writing them off. Everyone throughout the week was like, are the Cats going to go out in straight sets, or are they going to bounce back? And they proved everyone wrong. They bounced back very strongly, and now they carry in big form to take on the D's next weekend. But there was one casualty out there for Geelong. I think Brandon Parfitt did his hamstring, so he's obviously going to be out for the remainder of the year. So big blow for Geelong, but in the end, you can't really do much about that. So yeah, it's a big sound. Has to come back next year. But anyway, and big names for the Cats stood up, as we said. Tom Hall kicked 5, but he did get involved with a big incident that everyone thought he should have been suspended for.
Very
and Joel
late
Selwood,
to a marking contest.
yeah, again to Lockie Whitfield, and we want to gave away 50. And Joel Selwood too did kind of elbow Josh Kelly, I believe, and it was the neck region, and again he got off, and the AFL community wasn't happy. They said it was very similar to
that's the whole
Toby
problem.
Greaves.
That's the whole problem.
It's inconsistent, is what it is. I think
beyond inconsistent. It's never been consistent, so we don't know what consistency is.
Yes, but again, if Joel Selwood gets away with it, how did Toby Green then get suspended for it? It's the big question.
Just because of his name. But it's not like Joel Selwood's never done this before.
Exactly.
He's been let off time and time again. But Green just gets suspended and suspended and suspended.
Yeah.
Like I get that Toby Green's a fairly dirty player, if you want to put a word to it.
Yeah.
And Selwood's not that guy. He's just a hard player.
Yeah, he's a hard nut.
He does.
It's stupid.
Patrick Dangerfield,
another big name. Yeah.
Was
another
very
quiet
quiet.
One, didn't he?
Very, very quiet. Just the 20 touches, which isn't quiet. That's not a poor performance.
But if you say it in his terms, it was.
Yeah, it's finals. You got to step up your game or don't play.
Exactly.
That's the way it goes. And 20 touches, no real impact. Speaking of impact, though, Zach Tui came back for quite an immediate impact after missing. I think he got injured in round 21, so he missed 22, 23, and they're qualifying. So he missed 3 straight. Came in and honestly dominated. 31 touches at 90% disposal efficiency, which is very, very solid. Now the Giants side of things. Whitfield played his heart out once again. I think he had about 34 or something along those lines.
Yeah.
What's next?
I think they've got one more year in the tank. And then I think it's do or die. I think they've been around for 2015 or 16. They made their first final. So lost the semi, the prelim, the grand final. Now the semi again. They show up to September every year, but they don't really show that they're premiership, contenders. Because in 2019, everyone thought that they might have won the flag, but then we saw what Richmond did to them. So it's now or never. Next year or bust.
It's pretty disappointing. They're a fun side when they're on, the Giants. They're a good team as well. When they're on their game, and they exceeded expectations this year. I didn't have them in my 8 personally.
Neither did I. So
look, they had a good season. It's a solid grade if we were to grade them. But I don't know. I think as you said, it's almost now or never next year. Whitfield's aging. Not sure how old exactly he is. I'll get that up. He's 27, so he's right in his prime. Toby Green is right in his prime.
Kelly.
Hopper's entering his prime. Cornelio's in his prime.
Ward's going to retire.
Yep.
So
Davis is old. So it's now or never.
Mummy's gone. So there goes their ruckman. They do have Matt Flynn, but they need a backup. So I believe next year is now or bust for the Giants, or they go back to the, when they first started out in the comp and back down the ladder. So as you said, it is very disappointing, but it's without Toby Green. Toby Green needs to keep his mouth shut next year. He needs to start bumping into umpires, and hopefully he can get them further, because they're a better side with Toby Green, but as we all know, he's very troublesome. And I think it's impacting his teammates more than anything at the moment. So, he just needs to stand clear and not get rubbed in for the tribunal next year.
For sure. Now, potentially, and probably top 3 for sure. Game of the year. Brisbane versus Bulldogs. Not the highest scoring affair. It was a ripping first quarter in terms of score. We're like, all right, we're in for an absolute cracker. 33-22 was the first quarter score. The Saturday night clash at the Gabba, it wasn't a sellout crowd, which was the first surprise.
Yeah.
It was a bunch of empty seats, and there was a lot of Bulldogs fans in the crowd.
I was surprised. I was genuinely very surprised.
It was a bit of back and forth the whole game. The Lions kicked one, the Dogs would answer. The Lions led by around 20 late in the third. I think they kicked about 4 straight before the Dogs finished the quarter and started the fourth with 4 consecutive majors to peg it back. And actually took the lead early in the quarter. It was all tied up with 5 minutes to go. It was very climactic. We were out of our seats at home watching it before Bailey Smith produced a ripper running towards the boundary line on his left boot to send the Dogs up by 6 points and almost book a preliminary final berth, their first one in 5 years. But Zach Bailey would then stand up and bring it back to even Stevens with about...
This one got me out. That one got me out of my seat. That one got me up and about.
And then with about 45 seconds to go, not your pick for a heroic act, this bloke.
No.
Latham Vandermeer became the hero for the Dogs and soccered behind off the ground, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
And obviously by then they led by a single point, which they managed to hold on to in the last 40 or so seconds. And booking a preliminary final date with the Power were the Dogs.
For sure. It has a ripper, but there were some good standout performances, and the best on ground had to go to none other than Sir Jack McRae. He is an absolute superstar, turning into a superstar of this comp. He has 39 touches, 11 clearances, 5 tackles, and a big crucial goal next to his name. He's just a ball magnet. He's electrifying. I think he only needs 30 more touches, I believe, to break the all-time record for most touches in a season. So I'm sure he'll get there on the weekend. He gets 30 in his sleep. So I'm sure he'll break that, and obviously a big record. And the bloke that you could call him the hero, but Bailey Smith, he was a big game changer for the Dogs. 27 touches, 3 snags, and also that big one. That goal, when I first saw it left his boot, I thought, that's gone in. I was watching on my tally, and I knew it was going straight in. But
how about the celebration too?
It was a wacky one.
Paying tributes to the Bombers, who they demolished just 6 days before. With a bit of D'Angelo Russell ice in his veins, as he tried to explain it, but memes have said otherwise.
Yeah, it was a very wacky celebration, one we didn't see too often, but obviously the right time for it. I don't blame it all for that celebration. Big Joey, where did he go? Big Joe Danaher. He kind of disappeared the last 2 weeks. I believe he was the first player in 4 years to kick a goal in every single game. didn't kick one last week, and I believe he only kicked one this week.
Kicked one in the first quarter. I think it was the second goal of the game or something.
And then quarter time, he kind of didn't really show up after that. Same with Charlie Cameron. He kicked 3 in the first, but yet again none anywhere else throughout the game. So that's probably where it went wrong. Brisbane were lucky, but Charlie Cameron and Joe Danaher, the two big forwards for them, disappeared. And another big talking point that we saw was that without a minute to go, 30 seconds to go, the Bulldog skipper Marcus Bontempelli, who had a ripping game, mind you, had about 30 touches. Put up with a bit of a knee injury, bit of a niggle to the knee, and also he didn't come back on. There's only 30 seconds left, but he's been tested, but I believe he's should be able to play. I believe there should be no worries there. But
there's no reports on the initial scan, is what they're saying. But they're having a deeper scan, and I don't think they've released the reports to the public yet. But either way, I would expect him to play. He won't be at full capacity compared to what he normally is, but they need him if they're going to win on Saturday.
He's too much of an impact to let out. And poor old Cody Waitman got knocked out, or head knock, and he went off with a concussion. So unfortunately, due to the medical sub rules, he has missed 12 days, and he will not be able to be selected this weekend, which is a shame. We all love watching him play. He's very exciting. So he might have played his last game on the weekend, but who knows what they're going to do with him, who they're going to bring in. And now onto the Lions. What next? If they're going to lose Neale, what's going to happen?
Well, if they're to lose Neale, that leaves a fair bit of a gap. Obviously, they do have a fairly decent midfield. Not top 5 in the league, but
Brownlow medalist.
That's what we said earlier. Losing a Brownlow medalist is a big hole to fill. They're a potential finals miss next year if they lose Neale. It's a big call, but it's a big hole.
It is. It's
there's too many up and coming teams that'll just bump them down.
Yeah, got Freo, you got your Collins, you got your Saints. And that top 4, and they just snuck in that top 4, mind you. So,
And that's the thing. Did they deserve it now? After saying that, in my opinion, the 4 best teams this year are the 4 teams remaining.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. The Bulldogs are better than Brisbane. They were stiff. So, it's going to be a big shoes to fill. Whoever steps up into the midfield now, but. Yeah, it's not a great time for Brisbane fans, but I'm sure they'll come back next year. But I'm going to say next year is probably the last year. It's all or nothing for them. They've made finals the last 3 years, no success. Also, last year was the year to get it done, but they didn't. And is Chris Fagan kind of that Chris Scott type coach? Does it all in the home and away, and then can't bring it really into finals?
It's a hard question. I don't know is the answer to that question.
Yeah.
I don't think this Brisbane team that they put out this year, including their injuries, so their most recent team, like Hipwood and Rayner and stuff out.
Yeah.
I don't think it was premiership ready anyway.
Yeah.
Include Hipwood and Rayner and maybe sort of almost there. But I don't know if it's the coach or if it's just the players failing to deliver, but I don't have an answer to that question.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, but it's kind of what Carlton are in now. Is it the coach or is it the players that aren't getting the job done? So they always shop to finals, but again, they haven't got their overall goal, which was to make the grand final. And it's a tricky one for all Lions fans out there. Don't know how you're feeling, but pretty devastated, you'd think, to go down by a point, which is a lucky point, but it is what it is in the end.
All right. I think that wraps it up, unless we've got anything else to add over the last 10 or so minutes. Any breaking news?
Not that I've seen come through, but no, that's all I've got from here.
Perfect. So be sure to catch us Thursday for our next proper podcast, where we preview the prelim finals on Friday night's blockbuster match, and probably the two best teams going at it. Once again, a grand final on the prelim final weekend in Melbourne and Geelong, followed by Saturday evening's clash where Port host the Doggies. So make sure to join us on Thursday.
Will do.
Catch you then.
See ya.